Welcome to the Uncle's channel. Thanks for watching today, and let's continue our journey to finish every single Game Boy and Game Boy Color game. Today focus on a game called Conker's Pocket Tales for the Game Boy Color. Now, this is a very different era for Conker because he's very much of a happy-go-lucky squirrel who's looking for his birthday party, very innocent in pretty much like every way possible. And the Conker that everyone else knows is simply going to be a very bitter adult Conker with a alcohol problem, and life has not turned out his way. And so, like, it begs the question, like, what happened to Conker between this version and the N64 version? And it really just boils down to Nintendo or Rare decided that this version of Conker was just simply too innocent, and they tried to make the game a little bit more edgy. Because Conker was in Diddy Kong Racing, a very innocent little squirrel. He's going to be in Conker 64, 12 Tales, very innocent little squirrel. There's a lot of leaked footage out there of that game. And then the Conker's Pocket Tales was like the accompanying version of Conker 64, also innocent little squirrel. And Rare just decided that Conker is too kiddie, and they decided to make it more adult in the Conker's Bad Fur Day. Now, I would love to play Conker's Bad Fur Day, but I never actually have. It's a game I need to go back and play. I played all Rare's games growing up, you know, Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, Donkey Kong 64, GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, but I knew when Conker's Bad Fur Day came out, like, my parents were going to say no, so I didn't even, like, ask for it. I just already knew the answer and just sort of went with that. But at some point, I do need to go back and play it. But we are talking about Conker's Pocket Tales today, the game before they decided to make that transition over. And so we're going to figure out, is Conker Pocket Tales a good game in its own right, or is it going to be sort of a game they gave up on when they began to make the transition over to the more adult version of Conker? But we're going to figure all that out and more as we journey through Conker's Pocket Tales for the Game Boy Color. Now, this particular game did get moved up in the queue a good bit because Hot Wheels 555 requested one of my earlier videos, so naturally we moved it up in the queue. And if there's a game that you want to see me cover sooner or later, let me know the name of the game in the comments down below. And just like Conker's Pocket Tales, I'll move it right on up in the queue. Now, I always like to start the videos off looking at the box art for the game first. And the box art here, it definitely summarizes the game pretty much perfectly. You have Conker right there in the center. He has his slingshot, little Buckeye in the slingshot, getting ready to shoot it out. You have his acorn friends off to the side. There are plenty of acorns that you interact with throughout the game. And you also have a windmill in the background, and the windmill is where you get your slingshot from in the game. And so overall, I feel like the cover here is pretty darn accurate for the game itself. I did see somewhere this particular cover is a screenshot, or sort of a touched up screenshot from the 12 Tales Conker 64. And the little acorns off to the side are meant to be more like enemies. But I don't know, in the game itself, they are friends, and you can't really tell from the screenshot here if that's a mean acorn or a friendly acorn. So I personally feel like this is a pretty good box art for the game, but I can understand why there's some controversy behind it. Now, I don't generally look at the back of the box, but I do want to look at it for this game because there are two separate versions of Conker, whether you play it on the Game Boy or the Game Boy Color, and it's not going to be just simply the same game with color or no color. It's actually going to be like different maps, different music, different enemy placement, different way of saving your games. There's a lot of differences between the two versions, and so I'd almost call it like a remix of the same game. So if you finish the game on the Game Boy Color and you really enjoyed it, you can put it in the original Game Boy and play through a different version of the game with similar mechanics and basically experience a second game. So like a second quest to a degree. Now, I personally am going to go for the Game Boy Color version, but if you know more about the original Game Boy, feel free to let me know about the differences in the comments down below. Now, when you start the actual game up here, it does have a very flashy little intro, and that's pretty much on par with Rare, whether it be N64 or the Game Boy. They always had flashy intros, and then it has the title of the game and the clouds begin to separate. It scrolls down and shows Conker's house here with a little country squirrely theme playing in the background. I don't know if it's the same theme from the Conker's Bad Fur Day or not, but I'll let a little bit of it play right here because it is a pretty good song. Honestly, the soundtrack's not bad throughout. Some songs are definitely going to be better throughout the game, but I'm going to get to a complaint about how the music is handled later on in the video. But just know it does have a pretty decent soundtrack for the most part. Now, as far as the story, when you start the game up, it's a very, very basic story, and I really feel like they probably could have added more to it. Conker is having a birthday party. He invites Barry over. There's a cake there, and then the cake sort of explodes, and there's the evil acorn. That's just simply his name, Evil Acorn. He pops out, steals all of Conker's presents, takes Barry, runs away, and Conker is left in tears. And he's going to have to go find Evil Acorn, defeat him in order to rescue Barry, get his presents back, and enjoy his birthday party. That's the entire story. It's not great. And then the gameplay begins, and you're going to notice immediately it's going to be a Legend of Zelda style game as far as like the top-down view. You control Conker, different weapons, different items, and you're going to travel throughout all the environments collecting the necessary materials in order to defeat Evil Acorn and rescue Barry. Now you do start off in his home here, and honestly the graphics are pretty great as far as like doing a 3D rendering of Conker on the Game Boy. Rare had very much of a particular style they like enjoyed doing for like Donkey Kong Country, and bringing that over to smaller systems. And when it's in color here, I feel like it holds up pretty well because you can distinguish it from the background. If you're playing in black and white, it may not look as good because sometimes it becomes like more of a blurry mess with the shading and whatnot. If you're playing on color, I feel like the graphics are pretty good here for Conker and the environment and all of the enemies. Now, as far as gameplay goes, Conker does have a fairly basic set of moves. You can just simply walk around. You can also double tap to run. It's sort of a double speed. You can press A to jump, and you can press B to attack. But you don't really have an attack until you get a slingshot and Buckeyes, and you can sort of basically pull it back and shoot to different enemies. And ammo is limited, so you're going to want to collect every single Buckeye that you see pretty much throughout the landscape. And your little home area here it replenishes Buckeyes pretty darn fast. So if you ever run out, just do laps around the home and continue to collect Buckeyes. Every time I came out of a level and before I went into another level, I'd go back to the home and I would just simply farm for Buckeyes. Also, as far as like items go, you can collect little acorns and they give you extra lives or like hearts inside of a Zelda game. So every time you get hit, you lose an acorn and you can find more throughout the surroundings. Now around your home, you also have like a little dirt patch here. If you press select, you can dig down into the dirt and you come back up on the other side of somewhere else in the level outside the dirt. And you can collect different items and then dig back into the dirt again and travel to the original area. And so there's several dirt patches in the overworld here, and there's gonna be some dirt patches, throughout the rest of the game. But it is a power that Conker has as far as like digging in the soil to find different areas. Now there's not going to be like a map inside the game that you can access at any given time. However, if you go into like any of the main buildings, whether it's your home or any of the Acorns homes, you can go up to the wall and there's a map on the wall and it actually shows you where all the main areas that you need to travel to in the game. And they really should have included that as just simply a feature you could access in your menu, but at least it is there and you can actually sort of get an idea of where you need to travel to. Now the first area that you do need to go to is going to be the Forest Guardian's house, and when you're journeying over there, you're going to encounter the first enemies of the game. It's going to be like a Venus flytrap or piranha plant type enemies that can shoot projectiles out at you. You're also going to notice these little mushroom people. I thought they were robots at first, but they're actually mushroom people. There's also ravens that are going to come by and try to attack you as well. And for the most part, the enemies are going to be pretty easy to take out, especially when you get your slingshot coming up here in just a little bit. But if you're going to go through the areas, I do recommend walking instead of dashing, because if you dash, you're going to basically be traveling the screen so fast here, you're not going to be able to see the enemies coming up, and you'll end up running into them before you even get a chance to attack them and lose your health pretty darn fast. But overall, the enemy variety, it's pretty decent. We're going to get to more enemies as we journey through the game. Now, when you do go to the Forest Guardian's house, he's going to give you a key, which is going to go to the windmill, and we'll journey there in just a second. But he also gives you a gift, and it's one of your lost birthday presents that the evil acorn stole. And it's sort of like the jigsaws in Banjo-Kazooie or the stars in Mario 64. The more of the gifts that you collect, the more doors that are going to open up to different worlds that you can travel to. However, it's not going to be as free roaming as either of those games, and you pretty much have to collect every single present as far as like a blue present in order to advance into the correct worlds here. There's not going to be a lot of free roaming. If you just simply follow the basic path, you'll collect all of the blue presents in order to advance. And there will be some red presents that you can collect, like bonus items, but those aren't necessary to actually advance inside the game. So anyway, you do have a key here. You go to the windmill. You go through the windmill. You got a very, very much of a basic puzzle inside the windmill where you just push blocks, and then you get to go into the upstairs, and then you get your first item of the game, which is going to be the slingshot. And so now all of those Buckeyes that you've been collecting, you can use as ammo for your slingshot to take out different enemies. And you go back to the Forest Guardian's house. You get to play a mini game here for your slingshot where you have to shoot targets in a certain time period. And if you shoot them all down, he's going to open up a pathway behind his house into the spooky forest. Now, the spooky forest is really just named that because the trees are sort of burnt up looking. They look like a spooky forest. I mean, they did a fine job with the aesthetic here. But when you get to the end of it, you go into a barn, and inside the barn you get a key, which is going to open up the pathway to the Mushroom Town, which is in the bottom or southwest side of the map here. And so now you have to journey down to Mushroom Town. Now when you get down there, you do have to solve another box puzzle to get into the main town itself, and you also get a new move here, which is like a ground pound. And the ground pound is fairly difficult to use on a lot of different enemies. You can use it on mice and snakes, and there may be another enemy or two you can use it on. But it's fairly difficult to aim and get it to function correctly. And so for the most part, it's just easier to jump over these enemies and continue running. And otherwise, you're going to lose your acorns pretty fast. But when you get into Mushroom Town, for the most part, it's just going to be a series of buildings, one after another, very linear here. You go into it, and there'd be ground pound puzzles where you just simply pound on it, the switches in a certain order, and then the door opens up, you get a present, and you go into the next building. And I can't say it's like the most inventive puzzle, but it's a puzzle nonetheless. And when you get to the close of Mushroom Town here, you do find Evil Acorn, and he does say that he is surprised you've made it this far, and he's getting ready to unleash his first boss or his first enemy on you. His name is Histamine, and at first when I read that, I was like, man, it's like a giant allergy medication or something, because I mean, like a histamine. But then you go in there, and it's a rock snake, so it's like a hiss, you know, like a snake, and he's mean, histamine. So I don't know. I feel like a giant allergy medication would have been better here. But all you have to do is go in there and watch the rock snake travel across the landscape. He goes in through little holes and comes out of a different area. You stand back, shoot him with your slingshot. I mean, he's pretty darn easy. And when you take him out, you are going to get another present, and you have an opportunity to exit out of the area. Now, the next spot you have to go to is the barn, and you do have to have 8 presents to go into the barn. And lucky for us, since we followed the linear path of the game, we already have all 8 presents. And on our pathway to the barn, you do know some like party invites that you can collect along the way as well. And if you collect them all, you get an opportunity to have like a different or secret ending. And it also upgrades your ranking throughout. Like I go from Forest Fiend to Woodland Wanderer at one point. And you continue getting different rankings, and we're going to talk about like how disappointing those rankings truly are if you collect everything in the game, because I did look it up at the close, and it's nowhere near worth it here. But when you get into the barn, it's the same usual puzzles, and you exit out of the barn, and now you're in the desert land, or I think the correct term inside the game is Vultureville, and you're going to need to collect all 8 presents inside of Vultureville in order to exit back out of this desert area. Now, the first place I'm going to go to is an old rundown saloon, and you go in there like a little self-playing piano, which is pretty darn cool. There's an old cowboyish acorn fella who's going to talk to you. Definitely a friendly old fella. Tells you that you need to go south into the actual Vultureville. There's going to be like little cactuses that can emerge out of the ground sort of chase you around a little bit. There's also going to be like little skulls on the different signs. I mean, honestly, this is the best area in the entire game as far as like pulling together a cohesive aesthetic and really sticking with the theme, and like all the characters have like a very distinct accent, and just sort of keep the humor going. This is the pinnacle of the game. I mean, there's really nothing better that the game is going to have. As far as like other enemies, you do have some tumbleweeds you have to avoid. There's different snakes that you can stomp on, and it really does feel like from some of the screenshots I've seen in Conker 64 12 Tales that this is sort of a watered down Game Boy version of the same desert aesthetic. Now, even in the Vultureville itself, some of the buildings, you're going to have like the bank, you're going to have the hotel, you're going to have the blacksmith, and every one of those is going to tell me that I need to go see the Undertaker first. Like, everybody gives the exact same hint. So naturally, I go through Vultureville, I find the Undertaker's home. There's like little coffins and whatnot, so keeping up with the aesthetic. You go through there, you do find the Undertaker. He says that he has been shot, and he actually got shot by someone who looked exactly like me. What a weird thing to say to someone right before you pass away. He does die. He gives me a present from the Evil Acorn, so I'm slowly collecting my gifts here. And then the sheriff shows up, and he's like, hey, you're the guy who killed the Undertaker. And he arrests me and takes me back to the jail. Now, in the jail, it's very, very easy to escape because they're going to give you the exact same puzzles that we've had throughout the rest of the game. We complete those puzzles. We talk to the sheriff again. He's like, whoa, I guess you're more clever than I thought you were. Maybe you're not the murderer after all, which I guess really shouldn't prove your innocence in any form or fashion. But then he says the actual murderer is a skunk named Conker. And how you get a skunk and a squirrel confused is beyond me. They are vastly different creatures. We have tons of them that just appear outside the window here throughout the days and the evenings, and vastly different creatures. But I guess the Sheriff Acorn's just not the brightest nut in the tree. Nut in the shed, nut in the... I don't know. There's some saying that goes along with that. He's not the brightest bulb in the batch. That's still not right. He's not the sharpest tool in the shed. There we go. We're going to go with that, that particular explanation there. But anyway, he gives me a deputy badge, and he says he wants me to go out there and sort of do a, I guess, vigilante hunt for Conker. So now I'm going to be journeying through Vultureville here, trying to find Conker. Well, you talk to some different people around the area, and they say that there's a holdup at the bank. I go in there, I talk to one of the acorns, and it's a great little southern accent here. He's like, help, help. I mean, it's pretty good. It's best I can do for it. But anyways, Conker is holding up the bank, and you get into a one-to-one or one-on-one shootout with Conker here. It's a pretty fun little mini game. It's not like groundbreaking, but you know, you're firing back and Honker's firing at you, and your goal is to try to take Honker out. I don't know if Honker's in bad fur day or not, but they really should have utilized him again because he seems like a pretty classic little character here. But anyway, we do defeat Honker here. He does escape, but leaves a present behind. We take the present back to the sheriff. He tells us that if we're trying to find Barry's whereabouts, he doesn't have any more clues, but the Native Americans nearby, the vulture culture, might be able to help us out a little bit. On our journey to find them, we do come across these amazing looking moo cows. And I'm just going to put the image on the screen here because it's just a fantastic imagery for it. Very haunting, could almost belong in like a Coraline type movie. Really cool aesthetic, nothing else like it in the entire game. I don't know if they make it a reappearance in Bad Fur Day, but it would fit very well in like a adult area of the game as far as like trying to spook people a little bit. They should have put them in the spooky woods. Well, I guess no. There shouldn't be cows in the woods. I don't know. But anyway, back to vulture culture. We go into their teepees here. They say that they have no idea where Barry is located at, but they did see the evil acorn journey off into a particular direction. But that area is sealed off, and the only way to open it up is by having a golden mask. And they tell us in order to get a golden mask, they need some gold first in order to craft it. So we have to go back to the Vultureville, get all the supplies that we need. It's like a little trading game. You know, most of these older Zelda type games have trading games. You go through it, you eventually get a pan. You go down to the river here, and you get the pan for gold. And it's not like a super fun mini game, but it's you know, breaks the pace up a little bit. Press left and right, and you get to the little soil and silt out, collect all the gold. The graphics for the panning game here is fantastic, like in the background, showing like a little, I guess, a gold person's house in the back, or the, what would it be called? Miner's house in the back. That's the word I'm looking for. A great little aesthetic here. There are some pretty graphically impressive things inside this game, whether it's the haunting cows, or the mining for gold here, or the intro scene, or just a rare style in general of the 3D rendering. It's a impressive looking game in different parts here. But eventually you do take the gold back over to the vulture culture. They turn it into a mask, and you're able to advance north in order to try to follow the evil acorn to get your presents back and find Barry. Well, you do approach the evil acorn, and he tells you that he's going to introduce you to his next two bosses, who's going to be Soul and Luxo, who are two buzzards. And all you have to do is sort of dodge the buzzards as they fly around the arena here. And once they land, you can take your slingshot and shoot the buzzards. It's not a very difficult match, but at the same time, I enjoy a good boss fight. And when you finish them off, you do get a new special mask. It's not the gold mask, but a different mask, which is basically a snorkel here. But you can take the snorkel mask and you can go into the rivers or any ponds or any body of water. And where it's a little bit darker, you can actually dive down into that, and you can collect different items like party invitations or different presents and things that are going to help you along your way. But once I do have 8 more presents collected, I go back to the barn. I can journey back to the main overworld here. I go visit the Forest Guardian. He says now that I have the golden mask, I can also gain access to what's called the Crow Creek. I'm sorry, it's not actually Crow Creek, even though you go to a creek to get here. It's Crow Creep, which is like Crow Keep. You know how rarely enjoy their little puns at this era in their career. But anyway, you go up to the little creek here, a little water passage, you get to the castle. You go into the castle. We have some new enemies here. You got like a little floating sword that can attack you, floating razors that are on little platforms that sort of rotate back and forth to try to attack you, plenty of spikes to try to jump over. The same puzzles that we've encountered thus far in the game are going to be repeating for this area as well. And the only real difference here is going to be multiple bosses throughout the area. It's a witch. Her name is, make sure I get it right here, Waldorf. I don't know. Maybe it means something. I don't know. But that's what the evil acorn introduces her as. You fight her multiple times throughout the castle, and when you finally defeat her the last time and you've collected all the gifts inside the castle, you can exit the area and go back to the Forest Guardian. Now when you go back to him, he opens up the game to being somewhat open world here and says there are multiple paths that you can choose from in order to basically find 2 Aztec keys to access the last level. There's the Spooky Forest, which is going to lead us to the Claw Swamp. And then there's going to be the Mushroom Lake, which is going to take us to the Mako Islands. Now, I do choose to go to Mako Islands first, and I'm going to go ahead and say this is the most difficult part in the entire game. They do mix the gameplay up a little bit because they are going to give you different mini games to play, but they are incredibly difficult to actually master in order to defeat here. Now, when you get to the Mako Islands, it's a good little relaxing island soundtrack. This is probably my favorite song in the entire game, but let's go ahead and talk about the criticism I had on the soundtrack while we're here. Anytime you go into a building or you hit the pause button, it restarts the song back from the very beginning. And so it's like you're constantly hearing the intro of the songs and you're never really getting very far into the song. And that is just an annoying factor of the game. Like there's just something about having to hear the intro of the song or hear it stop and then restart every time you hit the start button or go into a building. I don't know, maybe it doesn't annoy most players as much as it does me, but I found this very, very off-putting as far as like how the soundtrack is handled. Good soundtrack. very poor mechanics. But as far as like the enemies inside the Mako Islands, you have little sharks, you have the green plants, you have crabs. I mean, it's going to be normal little ocean enemies here. But the main goal of the Mako Islands is to build a boat in order to race against Conker in order to get one of the 2 Aztec keys. But in order to build the boat, you have to get the 4 pieces of the boat and get the boat builder to construct it. And getting the 4 pieces of the boat is going to be incredibly difficult for the game. So there are 4 little huts around the Mako Islands. You have to journey to each of the 4 huts and play a mini game in order to get that particular part. Like to get the wood, you have to do like a little acorn shooting game. Press the A and B button as the acorns fly across the screen. Honestly, this is probably the easiest of the 4 games. I got it maybe like second or third try. Really not too hard. To get the propeller, it was a dash race. So you press left and right as fast as you can for just a few seconds. You get to like a little stop spot, stop at just the right time, and then you have to angle your character just perfect, and you have to jump 5 meters. Once I understood like sort of the mechanics of how it worked, it wasn't too bad, but it probably took me about 10 or 15 tries to get that one. Then I did the rudder, which is going to be a water swimming. You press left and right as fast as you can, swim against Conker here, and you press the A or B button to come up and breathe, and then journey back underwater and continue going. It's not super difficult. It's probably the second to hardest one. But then you get to the engine, and this is where you're going to race against Conker, and it's probably a 40-second race at least here. And you're having to press left and right as fast as you can, and Conker is very fast. I mean, like you are going as quick as you possibly can. The only way I was able to do is I got 2 hands on the D-pad going back and forth, just as fast as humanly possible, at least for me anyway. And then instead of taking a break to press the A button to jump over to hurdles, I had my foot on the control pad as well, and I could press the A button with my toe, jump over to hurdles, and that way I didn't have to move my hands back and forth from the D-pad to the A button because I would lose some of my speed. I'm telling you, it took me probably 40 minutes in order to beat just the engine minigame. I don't know if like everyone else had so much trouble with it as I did, but this was almost like a game breaker for a lot of players, I feel anyway, because not only is it difficult, but your body also gives out like physically trying to press it that fast for that long. And so I can't imagine a lot of kids actually getting past this, but hey, I could be wrong on that. Maybe I just simply did it incorrectly. But once you do collect all the parts here, you build the boat, you get to race against Conker around a little island here. Very similar like how Micro Machines on the NES was, or most racing games of this era. You just sort of take your boat, press the A button, and you drive around the island. Very easy compared to the mini games. But once you do that, you do get your first of the 2 Aztec keys, and now we're going to journey off into the Claw Swamp to get the second one. Now, when I do get to Claw Swamp, I do notice pretty quickly I'm missing some key items here as far as like an ability to burn down this little haystack. I have a torch, but I'm not able to burn down the little haystack. I'm not able to collect a pickaxe, which would open up to basically bust some rocks open. But all that's going to just lead to extra gifts I can collect or different party invitations, which is going to affect the ending. And so I'm going more for credit, so I'm not too concerned about that. There are some new enemies in Claw Swamp. You have the wolves, you have different spikes, and I guess that's actually just it. You are getting a new wolf here. And so not too much of a variety for Claw Swamp. Now, as far as like puzzles in Claw Swamp, it's going to really get repetitive because they're just going to keep throwing out more and more box puzzles on you. And they don't vary hardly at all. They're not super difficult. And it's just simply box puzzle after box puzzle after box puzzle, and very linear level. And when you finally get to the boss here, it's called the Swamp Fiend, and it's a little hand that comes up, and you have to basically do a ground pound on top of the hand. And I've already talked about how like difficult it was to control the ground pound, and so I figured out a way to cheese the Swamp Fiend. If you go to the bottom right hand corner, or even the bottom left hand corner, you can sort of get in the far area here. The Swamp Hand will come out and try to grab you. Can't grab you because you're too far away, but you're able to jump up into your ground pound, and you can take the Swamp Fiend out pretty darn quick here. Now, when you take him out, you do have 2 of the Aztec keys now, and you can go back to the main overworld. Then you have to dig through like little dirt patches like we did at the beginning of the game, and you eventually approach an area called the Aztec Temple, and you can use your 2 keys to go into the temple. Now, there is a cool aesthetic for the temple. There's a lot of different mosaics, different little rock traps you have to go against, but even though those 2 little things are introduced, it's going to be almost all box puzzles. And it's like, holy cow, like, were they not able to think of anything else? The game was somewhat creative at the beginning. You had like little mini games, box puzzles, as well as like stomp puzzles. None of them were like groundbreaking, but at least there was a variety. And at this point in the game, it's like they just gave up completely, and it's just like box puzzle, box puzzle, box puzzle, box puzzle, and it does get annoying. Now the final boss here of this, the Aztec temple, is a golem, and he basically opens his mouth up and he shoots out different enemies, and when you kill the enemies, then you can take one shot and hit it at his mouth in order to get a life bar taken away. He tries to suck you in when the mouth is open as well. He's really easy here, and when you do defeat him, the evil acorn pops up and says that you've defeated all of his enemies thus far, but he has taken Barry and he's hiding her in the catacombs, and in order to rescue her, you need to go to the catacombs and find him for the final showdown. Now the catacombs is located right directly outside of your house, and it's just a little hole in the ground, and you can journey around your house here and collect more buckeyes before you go in there, and I do recommend that because you're going to need pretty much 100 buckeyes before you go in order to kill all the enemies that you want to. And when you go in here, the catacombs is more like an abandoned mine than catacombs. There are no dead bodies, there's no skulls or skeletons or anything like that. It's just simply an abandoned mine, and the usual enemies, and guess what? More box puzzles. I would say there may be like 7 or 8 more box puzzles in here. Your goal is to find 6 acorn friends while you're down in the catacombs before you get to Barry. And when you find the acorn friends, they're going to open up different doors, and then those doors are going to lead to more box puzzles to solve, to open up more doors, and eventually you're going to get down to the evil acorn, and instead of like a final showdown, what he's going to do is going to basically put explosives throughout the mine or the catacombs, and he's going to blow it up, and you have 5 minutes to escape with Barry, otherwise you're going to die in the catacombs. And so you have to retrace all of your steps here in order to get out of the catacombs. And it's actually fairly difficult to remember your path that you need to go on, also to avoid the enemies that have respawned at this point, and also just simply keep your life up and the amount of time period you have to get out of here. Now when you do reach the end of the catacombs, you get a little cutscene of you and Barry hopping out of the hole, and then the explosion goes off and the evil acorn blows up and he flies off into outer space saying like he'll be back or something like that. And then at this point you do have a little cutscene of your birthday party, so you finally get to have all of the gifts that you've collected. You're excited for that, and then it shows you and Barry journeying down to the coastline with a little moonlit night, moon reflection on the lake. A really nice little romantic scene for you and Barry, and then the credits do begin to roll. And the credits are pretty good here as far as like, very large font, great animations from all the characters throughout the game. And so it felt like they took a lot of time to make the credits. And when you do finish it, it does say what your final ranking is. I got Treetop Terror, and then it just simply has the end sign of you and Barry holding the sign. Now, if you collect every item in the game, as far as like the invitations, every optional gift, the only difference in the ending is going to say Birthday Bonanza instead of whatever ranking that you got. No extra cutscene, no extra game modes, nothing, just simply an alternate text at the close. And what a massive letdown that would be if you went through and collected everything in the game. That is, that's just rude to do that to players. But anyway, let's talk about the game as an overall. Now, the game is very unbalanced in my opinion. There are parts of the game I think are pretty darn good, like the soundtrack. It's a good soundtrack for the most part, but weird mechanics. Then you have a pretty decent little adventure mode here. So you're journeying through all these different areas, but then you end up playing the same mini games over and over and over, and they sort of ruin it with the mechanics again. Then you journey into another part where the mini games are actually going to be somewhat of a variety, and they make the mini games so incredibly difficult that you aren't going to be able to advance for probably like an hour or two of your time. So once again, they ruin it with mechanics. And so it's like the game here had good ideas, but I don't know if they just simply ran out of time and they just sort of rushed the game out the door by just sort of copying the same assets over and over and over and not checking for like balancing and such. But they just really did not do a great job as far as like doing a presentation of the game and really hammering out the mechanics to make an overall fun experience. And so me personally, I would probably not go back and play this game again. It's just a little too straightforward, and it's a little annoying in many cases, and it's a little bit too repetitive. But I don't think it's a terrible game. I'd probably give it a 5 out of 10. Just a right down the middle, average overhead game. I think for Rare, it is disappointing, and the company Rare could do a heck of a lot better. But I think it was sort of they decided to change the direction of Conker, going to more of the adult mode. This game was almost done. They sort of finished it up by copying some assets over and copying some mechanics over and just really not testing it out a whole lot, pushing it out the door to get the money off of it, probably to help fund the rebranding of Conker's Bad Fur Day. That's my guess, all speculation, I don't know. And also, I do feel bad for Hot Wheels 555. He's requested multiple videos at this point, and I feel like every time he requests one, I end up not enjoying the game a heck of a lot. And that's, I don't know, I feel bad about that, but it's just simply, I didn't enjoy Conker's Pocket Tales a lot. I don't think it's a terrible game, 5 out of 10, but Hot Wheels, I do apologize for not giving this game a higher ranking for you. But anyway, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out my other videos listed up above, and go out there, find a great game to play. Simply have a great rest of the day.